Good afternoon. I'm Yomika Bennett, Executive Director of the New York Charter School Association. Welcome to our weekly Thursday webinar where we do a deep dive into a specific topic. As in the past, we'll be recording this webinar and posting it and any related materials to the webinar section of our website. We'll also field questions after the presentation using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. This week, we're going to focus on best practices in remote hiring in the current context. We've heard from many of you that this is something you have been thinking a lot about, experimenting with, and interested in hearing from experts about how best to adapt your hiring. I'm pleased to be joined by Wayne Tam, founder and head of Selected, Jonathan Howard, VP of School Experience and Growth, and Alex Thorson, Director of Community and Content. Selected is a social impact company dedicated to connecting schools with the most relevant, committed, and diverse educators. Selected offers a teacher outreach and hiring platform that matches schools with teachers and school leaders based on right fit preferences in urban metros throughout the Northeast USA, California, Arizona, and Texas. Their aim is to simplify and reduce the cost of teacher recruitment, especially for urban schools. Wayne, Tam, and Alex, welcome and thanks for joining us. I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Amika. This is Jonathan Howard from Selected. Today, myself and my colleague Alex will be presenting. Just want to thank you, and thank Anna and then the rest of the Nexen team for having us. We're super excited and appreciative of this opportunity to come talk with you all about virtual hiring. So today's session is on conducting effective virtual teacher interviews and demos. I'm really eager to hear how that's going for folks, maybe at the end in Q&A. But today, since the world changed about, I guess, 12 weeks ago, we've been trying to just help schools put together resources to help them figure out virtual hiring. I know it took folks a while to figure out student learning, right, which is the priority. And now that is up and running, and the year's coming to an end, the shift in focus seems to have moved to filling these teacher roles, right? So today we'll talk a little bit about that and hopefully share some best practices that you can take and implement right away. So again, just quickly, Jonathan Howard, VP of School Experience at Selected, my colleague Alex Thorson, our Director of Community and Content today. Quick agenda. So we're just going to go over some really high level basics of virtual interviewing. We will talk about virtual demos and how to handle those and different ways you can think about that. We'll walk through some of the biggest challenges with virtual hiring and outline some key best practices. And then at the end, feel free to use the Q&A tool at the bottom of the screen for questions and sharing. As we're going through this presentation, please keep in mind any insights or best practices you have to share. Please consider sharing them with us. Like we have compiled a lot of resources on our website that Anna, I'll share. I can share with the team so she can share out as well. And then also the resources that you see, we're gonna have a lot of just examples, some just practical examples of templates you can use. We'll share that as well. So Anna can share that out. Or put it on the Nexen site. And then just keep in mind any lessons learned or things to avoid that you think would be helpful for the group to know about. All right, so here we go, virtual interviewing 101. So first things first, we're all on Zoom right now. You need a solid, reliable platform. We recommend just using Zoom. It's free for educators right now. Keep in mind that with the free account, you only get 40 minutes per meeting. So if you have interviews that last longer than that, you may want to consider upgrading. But Zoom's great for demos and larger meetings such as this. You all should be pretty familiar with Zoom. We also use Google Hangouts just for video calls. If it's like just one person or just a small group of folks, Google Hangouts Meet works pretty well. And then we really see there's an opportunity here to sort of get realigned on what your ideal candidate profile is. So taking a step back, meeting with your team and just really thinking through what are the things you're looking for in your ideal candidates? What gaps are there on the team that you need to fill? And then creating rubrics and scorecards around those things so that you're as objectively as possible measuring those things and ensuring that you're getting the things that you need to make decisions on candidates quickly. Process is key. So you're going to want to map out your entire hiring and selection process. What you're going to find is that it's not a whole lot different than it was before. But outside of just doing everything virtually, things are pretty much the same, but it's still a good opportunity to just map that process out. What is important for both candidates and your interview team is that you create process and expectations documents and emails for each group, so that it's crystal clear what the expectations are for both candidates and folks on your team who are interviewing. It's really important to have build in different touch points with candidates before the interview. Candidates also are anxious about this process, right? This is new for them as well, and so again, those expectations docs, taking time to have a quick call with them before the interview to preview, or you can also do that if you're on the phone and you know that you're moving them to the next step to preview what's to come. And then we also recommend just using the first 5 minutes of any interview that you're doing, especially demos, just to walk through the platform, make sure everyone's comfortable with how it works, how to screen share, et cetera, just to set yourself and the candidates up for success. Finally, you can use this process to sell your school, right? So where are ways that you can incorporate your core values into your process now? Obviously, candidates can't come to your school building. They're not going to be able to really see your culture in action. And so thinking about ways to share social media posts or having one of your teachers do a testimonial to tell folks about how great it is to work at your school. So really just using this as an opportunity to really sell who you are as a school. Candidate setup. So just some things to keep in mind to set candidates up for success. You're going to want to have really clear video platform instructions, like literally walk through every single step and list them out so that it's crystal clear. What to expect during the interview, who's going to be interviewing them, who are they. If you're really ambitious and you want to put together video intros of the interview team or yourself to share, that's a really nice touch. Just makes it a little bit more personalized. And then just a small thing, just including your phone number as a backup, just in case tech things happen with tech, things go wrong, and so just making sure that they have a way to get in touch with you if things drop off. So just a quick example, and again, this is something that we will share that you can get from the Nexen team. Just a simple candidate email template. One thing that you can think about is if you are someone who uses like a Calendly to have people schedule calls, that can save time there. And then again, there's an opportunity to insert your core values, like actually, if you have a web page that walks through your core values or a one pager or something like that, you can include that here. Another example, just from one of our school partners out in the Bay Area, ACE Charter Schools. This is what they share with candidates. They just put a simple link in there with how to join a Zoom meeting. You can see they have a place to include their phone number. So it could be something that's really detailed or something really simple. It really just depends on your style and what your process is like. The interview team prep. It's almost more important that you make sure that whoever is doing the interview is just on the same page, so that they understand how the video platform works. They know the norms and expectations of conducting phone interviews. video etiquette. You want to make sure that, folks understand that, hey, you're on video, you got to be active and engaged, looking into the camera, et cetera. How to share documents, do you all use Google Drive? Whatever your document sharing process is, making sure that folks are clear on where to find candidate resumes, candidate scorecards, et cetera. Interview agendas are really critical. We recommend, I think the easiest thing is just to have a process of putting the agenda in the calendar invite for each interview so that everybody knows where it's at. You could also just have a separate document in like a Google Drive or something like that to keep stuff in. The key is that everyone knows where to find what they need. And then finally, just schedule, make sure you schedule debriefs, right? The last thing you want to do is go through the process and have a candidate go through the process of doing these interviews, doing demo lessons with you, and then it takes you a long time to debrief as a team and make a decision. So make sure that you don't forget to schedule debriefs beforehand. Here's an example of some interview team guidelines. Again, this will be shared. This is a little long, but it just shows you all the things you need to think about. So thinking about, making sure that they have the platform, they know where to download it, where to find candidate information. During interviews, I just want to highlight just being present and free of distractions. Candidates, you're judging candidates and they're judging you. And so just making sure that you're very clear with yourself and with your team about just being present during those interviews. One of the challenges, which Alex will talk about later, is just it's hard to get, it's hard to make that personal connection. And so doing all you can to just be present on the camera is going to be key. And then dress code as well. Are you wearing school gear? Do you need to be dressed professionally? All those things, even though it's a little detail, are things that you should make sure are crystal clear for your interview team. Another quick example from another one of our partners, Alliance, out in LA. They provide just guidance on how to sign in and et cetera. One more example on an interview team prep from neighborhood charter schools in New York. This is what they do. It looks like they just use an Excel sheet. They clearly list out the components of the parts of the interview, who's responsible, how much time it should take. All really just depends on what your process is and what is going to be most helpful for you. I just wanted to share, we talked about school culture. Here's an example of how Avenues, the World School, does it. They do a really great job of just incorporating their culture and their core values into their interview process. They're even really explicit about telling candidates to review them and come to the interview with questions. So just an example of how you can do that. Moving on to talking about virtual demo lessons. This seems to be the place where it causes the most anxiety and how folks are handling these. So again, with these, the process is key. The most important thing is to have clear guidelines and directions for candidates on how virtual demo lessons should work. You really have to think about just what you need to see, right? So we talk to schools, schools are if a candidate has a video, they're allowing them to submit videos. Some schools, even if a candidate has a video, are adamant about having a live demo. And I've heard schools doing anything from like a quick 10-15 minute read aloud for somebody at the elementary level to having someone do a full just demo lesson on Zoom, right? So it really just depends on what you need to see. I mean, keep in mind too, candidates are interviewing with other schools, and so the more hoops you're going to have them jump through, and for some candidates you just need more information and you need to see more. But just realize especially for those people that you're really excited about who are good that you want to get in the door, you want to expedite the process to get to that offer, to get them on board as quickly as possible. We recommend, if you're thinking about it or you're undecided, I would always lean toward getting a video. It's a lot more common these days. Like most folks, especially folks that are coming out of teacher prep programs, like they're doing recording, so they should have video of themselves teaching kids. That's ideal. If not, have them record one. They can do it on their own time. You don't have to get 5 people together for a live demo. It gives them an opportunity to be creative, using students, using family and friends as students, or doing a webinar style. Again, you have to think through what you want that to look like. And then if you must do a live virtual demo, you need to think about how long you're going to be, you want them to be, and then make sure that the hiring manager is present, right? So whoever's going to make that decision, if you're going to do live demos, like that person needs to be present for that demo. Some demo video guidelines, what you need to include, how long should the video be, how are they going to share it. YouTube and Vimeo are easy options for just, you can have private pages so that only you can see it. How should candidates share the lesson plans with you? Should it be via email? Should it be some other way? Student work samples, and then just giving them a timeline for turning that in. So here are some just recorded demo guidelines, again, from Avenues. They had a really great resource, and they were generous to share it with us so that we could share it with you. But again, these are things that we'll share. Just wanted to give you an example to take a look at. They're very clear on how long they want the demos to be, how they want them uploaded, the timeline for getting them back to them. Some live virtual demo, some instructions, example for live virtual demo lessons that we created. Giving candidates, if you're going to do a live virtual demo, you may want to just give them a lesson plan to execute, give them autonomy to make tweaks if they want, or you may, on the other end, want them to create something from scratch. It really just depends on you, what you need to see. Being clear about the interview team's role, and if they're there to be to be students, maybe you want them to just maybe you want it to just be clear that the interview team is just sort of there as observers, and they should just pretend that they're not there. Whatever's gonna work for your process. One thing to keep in mind that I've heard from a lot of schools is you want to just be clear with candidates on staying in character. Heard a lot of people doing demo lessons, and it's natural, right? Like it's kind of an awkward platform that we're not all used to yet, and they jump out of character. So they'll teach, they'll teach some content, and then they'll sort of step away and sort of try to explain their thinking. That may be okay for you, but if you want them, if you're really trying to assess just their presence and just their voice as a teacher, you want to just encourage them to stay in character and wait until the end to the debrief to talk about their thinking. Again, our partner ACE, just some live demo guidelines. This is they have a very short, clear way of letting candidates know what they're looking for in their demo lessons. Actually, Pear Deck is a great resource for sharing materials, if that's something you want to look into as well. And now I will pass it over to my colleague Alex to talk about some challenges and best practices with virtual hiring.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. I get the fun stuff. All right, so one of the biggest challenges we're seeing schools facing is this idea that the virtual interview can feel impersonal. A solution here is to share information about your team and those expectations for the interview ahead of time. You want to make sure that during the interview, we're not trying to figure out what those expectations were, what role each person on this interview team is playing. That needs to be clear ahead of time. But we also want it to feel like we know each other, because in that virtual setting, there are so many things that get in the way of feeling like we are building an actual relationship. So one thing you can do is send either video or written bios of the interviewing team. This helps the candidate sit down to that interview and put a face to the name, but also feel like they understand the context of why each person is there for the interview, what their roles are. They maybe have specific questions to ask that person, or they see something in the bio that sets them up to ask a question that helps to build that connection. So that one's really a win-win for you and the candidate. You also want to share information about your school ahead of time for the same reason. Set norms for the interaction. What's it going to look like? Are we going to be on video? Will people be muted? To that point, I do strongly encourage you to stay on video, the whole team, because candidates start to wonder like what's going on behind the scenes when they can't see people. Are you there? Are you listening? Are you distracted? And you don't want them in that headspace. You want them there to give their best, knowing that you're ready to receive it. Also, walk through the platform full group to get ahead of any tension. So besides sending the information on how you're going to use the platform and what platform you're using, just do a super quick walkthrough. Make sure everybody knows where that chat feature is, how to look, or where their camera is, how to respond to the full group versus privately with chat. I also probably would encourage trying to stay away from some of those private chat combos, because every now and then there's an accident and it does go full group. But that's going to help make sure that no one's wondering what they're supposed to be doing, and they can really focus in and be present. The second challenge is sharing about your school and really selling your school culture. So share photos, share videos, share testimonials from the school community. That can be the team teachers that this person will be joining. It could be family members, broader community members, students themselves. Let people know what it's like to be at that school and what school they are joining, what culture they're joining, and how they are best positioned to add to it, and just to know if it's even the right fit. Sharing a typical teacher schedule can be really helpful. I always suggest sending photos, videos of the hallways, the classrooms, the school grounds, and really making sure that it's a true representation of what that teacher is going to see when they enter campus. Because it's virtual and we can't do those in-person school visits, you don't want that to be a deal breaker or a reason that retention may become an issue during that first year that they're with your team. Artifacts also go a really long ways. This helps teachers understand what's expected of them and what expectations they're going to have of their students. And again, to know if it's the right fit and if they're the right cut to join your team. This can be student artifacts of like student work. It can be teacher lesson plans, right? What are you expecting of me to show you when I do submit a lesson plan? Again, we mentioned testimonials, and then virtual office hours and info sessions can also go a really long way. And we've also done some school panels. So if you want to reach out to us and let us know best practices you're doing, things you're doing in hiring, and just ways you want us to help you get in front of our candidates, let us know. We'd love to talk to you about that. Third challenge, these interpersonal cues. Again, besides the interpersonal cues that are going to be really important, I also want to stress just the tension that comes into play in these virtual interviews. If I am your candidate and I show up for an in-person interview, I could mess up that interview. But now in a virtual setting, I can mess it up. My internet connection can mess it up. My computer itself could mess it up. My kids or my spouse might make noise in the background and mess it up. Maybe all of that's happening for my interviewer and they mess it up, right? So I've got all of these other things that I am now worried about, and I need to help do all of this that's on the screen right now to clear some of that up. So familiarizing yourself with your preferred platform and giving, again, candidates everything they need to be able to do the same. Looking at that mic that you've got, the camera that you've got, how are you going to mute things? When are you going to mute things? What does the screen share and chat features look like? And remember that webcam is your candidate. If you usually make a lot of eye contact with candidates when they're speaking, that's your webcam. You don't want to get caught staring off into space or sitting back too relaxed and putting into the mind of a candidate that maybe you're not paying attention or maybe you're just not interested in them, when that's not at all the case. Gallery view and that split screen is going to help make sure you can keep those cameras up for your team and for the candidate, which is going to help you see eye rolls, moments where they don't seem interested, moments where they seem confused, and maybe you want to clarify a question or something that you've asked of them. So paying attention to that is important. And again, being on the same page with your team, because if you're looking in the webcam, you might miss wherever it is that you've got that gallery view. So having someone on your team catch that can be very important and will allow you, this last bullet, to be present on camera. And then our fourth challenge is just getting that hiring team on the same page. So meet with them before and after each interview. You don't want us wondering which candidate we're talking about. You want to make sure that's very clear. Create and agree on that ideal candidate profile. So again, we don't end up debating aspects that are deal breakers or that are non-negotiables for our team and our staff. Share documents and make sure that if you're going to share those documents, if you want people editing them or just viewing them, access to do so has been granted to the right team members. Schedule those debriefs immediately following the interviews and build that into the scheduling of those interviews. And then do a test run with the interview team. You may want to do a platform test run, and you may also just want to talk about the candidate before the actual interview. Are there certain questions you want to make sure you ask, certain worries that you or another team member may have? And then finally, on our challenges, we've got a couple here really evaluating those hard to screen for criteria. Assessing behavior management, we've got some resources on that. We've done a webinar on that. I highly encourage you to just think through what are some opportunities to assess behavior if we can't do a live demo lesson that has students involved, or if as a team we're not going to play the part of students. Quick ways to try this are different scenarios. You can actually create a role-playing situation. You can just have a scenario and ask, what would you do? You could also look through a lesson plan and just throw out a hypothetical situation, right? Like, this is what you're going to do. Here's a check for understanding. You're going to ask, what happens if a student does X, Y, or Z? How do you respond? So those are opportunities to assess behavior management. Asking for lesson planning materials and student work samples so that you understand what the teacher is looking for and what their expectations of students might be. Do those align with what your school is going to hold them accountable for? And then another opportunity is to have the candidate review and provide feedback on a video you send them. Maybe this is another teacher at your school. Maybe it's you yourself doing a lesson and asking them, you know, what's some top line feedback you might give this teacher? How would you work with this teacher? So you can gauge a couple different things, just their understanding of strong lesson planning and strong execution. And also, are they a team player? What if this video is their partner teacher? How are they going to interact and how are they going to help each other grow? So those are some other options for you. And then of course, sourcing concerns. Where are we supposed to find teachers if there are no longer job fairs happening? We are an option. You can join us at Selected. We source with schools of education. We do different webinars to attract both aspiring teachers and current teachers who are just looking to get better in their practice. So we've definitely got a strong candidate pool, and come check us out. You have 15 free invites if you're not yet an account of ours. See who we've got and see if we align with what you're looking for. Cool, Jonathan, you are muted, just so you know.
Thanks, Alex.
Yeah.
I just want to piggyback on the sourcing. Before everyone jumped on, Anna, we were talking with Anna about sort of how hiring's going, and one of the things we're hearing from schools is that you're having higher than normal retention, which makes sense, right? You know, folks are looking for stability in times of instability, and so, you know, they're going to stay. But, you know, but I think the concern or the worry from schools is that teachers might jump last minute. And so, you know, whether you still have definite openings for next year, or, you know, you want to just continue, like, keep sourcing for to have some folks in your back pocket. Selected is a great option for that. And then with any of this stuff, you know, if you're trying to figure out just what your hiring process is, or if you want, if you just want a thought partner on that, or if you just want to talk about us helping you find teachers, like, we love talking about this stuff. So please reach out. Our info is here. You know, Jonathan at Get Selected, Alexandra at Get Selected. Please reach out to us. You know, we want to be as helpful as we can be. If you're looking for additional resources, you can check out our blog. There's a lot of good stuff on virtual hiring there. And then just, again, you can try us for free. We don't charge any hiring fees, and you can send 15 free invites to try us out and start connecting with candidates who are actively looking right now. So I don't know how the Q&A works, but you know.
Yeah,
I think,
thank you all so much.
Yeah.
Super appreciate it. I mean, such like one chapter in the whole book of Uncharted Territory. So if folks have questions, they can feel free to put it in the Q&A. I will say I have a couple that I'm maybe I'm wrong that other people might be thinking, but if I were a school leader right now, a couple of the things that you all hit on that really perked my ears up that I would love to hear a little bit more about. One is this idea, I love this idea of intro videos or like video bios of either the interviewers or as sort of a function of sharing the mission or the vision or the why of the school. Have you seen best practice? Like, is this people sort of like on their phone doing a little bit of like, just sort of making a video on their phone, or like what, especially right now, how would you, if people thought that that was a great idea, what would you advise that they do?
Yeah, that can be super grassroots. I would stay as strictly as possible to who you are as a school. If you have a very laid back culture, everyone's working together, everyone's collaborating around whether it's lessons themselves or something within the school culture, that should even come out in how you're doing your intros. So that could just be on your phone, sitting somewhere casually, letting people know who you are and what you're about. If there's some other characteristic of your school that you want to come across, I do something again in that video to make sure it just aligns with how you're hoping the candidate is going to show up and feel the most a part of the team structure that is already there and the school culture that is already there. Does that answer that question?
Yeah, it's super helpful. I think it's a great idea and not something I would have thought of, but I think could be really helpful in making it feel more like a dynamic, engaging activity as opposed to just, you know, just another screen, which we all have a lot of. So speaking of video, would also love you all to opine a little bit about the pros and the cons of recording. So if you're doing a demo, recording it, or even if it's just an interview, recording it, do you need to ask the person's permission? If students are involved, how do you all think about that? Would you make a recommendation one way or the other? Have you, do you have any reflections on the sort of pros and cons of recording?
I mean, I think it's fine. I mean, I think you should let if you are going to do it, just let the candidate know. Like if you're using Zoom, like you can see if it's, you know, you see the red dot, the recording button. And when I was at Democracy Prep, we recorded all demo lessons. We didn't, like, we just I just kind of gave people a heads up, like it wasn't really a problem. So people shouldn't have a problem with it. You know, you may want to run it by just your HR team just to ask if that's okay, or maybe legal to run it by them, but it should be fine. And I mean, the pro of it is that, you know, you can go back and rewatch it later and you know, maybe see something you missed. But I don't really see a ton of downside unless the candidate is against it, which, for me, unless there was like some real, like real compelling reason, like could be a flag if they were just adamantly against being recorded.
Yeah, and on the candidate side, we always suggest that they do like a private video share. So if it's a recording they've already had, and there are students present, usually making sure that that's private and knowing from you all that it's only going to be for your team and for this hiring purpose. Most hiring documentation is held very confidential anyway, so they're usually okay with it. If you're going to use your own students, it would probably be the same process that you're doing with just parental permission to do that, whether that's like a permission slip or whatnot. And I think a little more of a hidden pro to having a recorded demo lesson is, teachers, they want to show you their best when it's a live demo, but they've probably put even more into it if they're going to record it and send it in. Maybe this was used for a class if they are an aspiring teacher and it was at their university, but you're also getting a really strong glimpse at their exemplar and what you can hold them accountable to and what you should be able to continue to see from them and push them to. Or if that's their best, are you in a position to build those skills from who you have on your team right now to make them the right candidate for you? So
that's super helpful. That's super helpful. So Ellen asked in the chat, so I'm not sure participants if you're able to see this. I think only the panelists did, but it's a great question about resources for finding candidates that identify with affinity groups or lines of questioning that are appropriate, but the ability to understand how someone might identify beyond how you necessarily see them just on video.
That's a great question. I mean, I don't think we have an immediate answer now or a way to do that like on the platform and selected. It gets a little bit complicated to trying to do that. But I mean, it's certainly something we can think about and get back to you on and share with Anna to share out with the group.
Yeah, and Ellen, this is a great question. I think, again, as Jonathan said, well, we don't necessarily have anything concrete to give you right now. I also think if this is important in your school culture, that you emphasize that. You talk about some of the different affinity groups and affinity spaces that you're offering teachers, students, any of that kind of thing, and just to gauge their interest and see if anything piques interest for them individually, if they're asking certain questions, if you can scope out any mindsets around certain affinity groups, if they're hearing about them. So that may be something that you can do if that's a focus for your team.
Thanks. And last question, any brainwaves or sort of new wrinkles on the incredibly important topic of attracting diverse candidates in particular right now, and certainly with the concern that I know everyone has about the digital divide and whether or not, as you said, Alex, I think you made a great point about there's a smaller set of ways to ruin an in-person interview, but a much longer list of ways that a virtual demo or an interview can go wrong. And how does that factor into how schools are thinking about the incredibly important topic of having a diverse teaching force?
What I can tell you just on our poll is that over half of our candidate pool identify as people of color. So just from that perspective of diversity, we do have a very diverse set of candidates on selected. I think it's one of those difficult things, right? Because that's not something you can sort of use like that we can use as we're vetting candidates. But certainly we do have schools who use selected exclusively as a tool for increasing the diversity of the candidates that they're seeing. So I would encourage you to jump on, create an account. You can see candidates right away after signing up, and so you'll be able to take a look at your matches for yourself and decide who you want to reach out to. But yeah, it's we have a very, very diverse candidate pool.
Yeah, and I think having options for whether it's a written response or role-playing scenarios, something that you could do just over the phone if an issue becomes not having access to a computer or a computer with a webcam, it happens. So, and it may be more common than most people realize. So having an opportunity to answer and complete these different portions of an interview that way can be very helpful. But it's definitely a trickier situation that we're going to run into because it's virtual that we may not have uncovered given that it is or would have been in person. Another common concern that has come up with candidates is worrying that maybe a school is going to consider their candidacy differently if they know that they have children. And how do I make sure I keep my kids quiet during an interview? I would just do whatever you can to stress to candidates that we get it. Like, we're all working from home. There are plenty of distractions going on. Those aren't things that are going to keep you from being a strong candidate for us. And any ways that you can kind of ease those tensions are going to be very helpful. And same thing with backgrounds. People are worried, well, what are you going to think of the area that I'm in when I'm doing these videos? And so whether you want to tell people they can go ahead and throw up a background if they want to, or again, just letting them know any neutral space is a perfect space for you to do this interview, and just kind of thinking through what might be a concern for a candidate that would not have been present had we been able to have them at our school or office.
I think that's great. And I have to say, the point about kids so resonates, and I can only imagine the stress of a teaching candidate being concerned about the perception that their kids are off the chain, either behind them or in the audio, because that has certainly happened to me over the course of the past few months, knowing that, and I've had to sometimes characterize the type of screaming that people might be overhearing in my house as happy screaming, for example. Difficult to, yeah. Well, thank you both so much. And Yomika, I will hand it back to you.
Thank you. This was great. I just want to say again, Wayne, Jonathan, and Alex, thank you again for joining. Thank you for this wonderful presentation. Everyone, pay attention to the screen. Take a look at their contact information. Follow up with them as needed. Please reach out for help. Always call us as well for anything that we can help you with. Thank you again. We will hope that you have a safe and pleasant weekend, and we will see you on Tuesday for our webinar at 4 p.m. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.